trust everyone is doing well. As you guys can see, I have a beautiful guest with me.
Hi everyone, my name is Mary and I'm a huge financial literacy advocate. Personal finance is something that I find very near and dear to my heart. Just from my personal experiences as a first-generation American. My mom's from Ghana, my dad's from Kenya, and having immigrant parents and having to, learn how to navigate America and the finance system has been a journey. And I'm just happy to share things that my parents have taught me and what I have learned on my own experience and from experiences that I've had generally in work and then working at a few banks when I was in New York. So I'm really happy that Magli has me on her episode today to share this. And I wanted to wish everyone a happy Women's Month.
Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I guess my background, it goes way back to, in Texas. I'm a first-generation American. My parents are both immigrants from Africa. My dad is from Kenya. My mom is from Ghana.
Habari, hey.
Yeah. My parents, first-generation first-generation American. My parents are African. And so I grew up in Texas. So that's really a lot of where my journey with financial literacy started from, was being a first-generation American. But then I lived in Ghana for a few years, came back. I went to school in New York. I studied accounting. I wanted to be an accountant. My dad is an accountant, worked in finance, so I kind of wanted to follow his footsteps.
Oh, daddy's girl.
Dad, if you're seeing this. But I've always really taken an interest to numbers. And then I did intern at a few banks when I was in New York. And then I moved out to California. I work in revenue management. It's a field in hospitality. I love it. I really feel like that's kind of my jam. But I've always been a financial literacy advocate. And that's either through talking about it with my friends, family, volunteering, wherever I can kind of put in my 2 cents and just kind of teaching people a little bit more about it, just based off what I have learned. And a lot of in the spaces, in specific places that I worked, specifically at banks on Wall Street, I learned a lot just from interning there that I ever had in any classroom.
Wow.
Which I think was something that a lot of people just don't have access to.
And why do you think is that you learned there more than you actually learned in school?
Well, I think it's the access to specific individuals to an extent, and you just don't. I mean, school. I feel you can only learn so much through text, not through textbooks. But when it comes down to what people are actually doing with their money, I don't know. I don't really see too many. You can have a CEO who's book smart, but most of them are kind of I don't know. It's really their network and really doing it instead of being book smart. I think being book smart it's cool if that's your thing, but I don't think that's what's going to define you as a person. It's really these spaces. I definitely learned about, okay, this is what this person is doing to kind of generate money for their family, for future generations, and it's because they've been doing it for years, and their grandparents and their grandparents. So it's kind of first nature to them versus being a first generation American. We just may not have that sort of resources. Right.
Actually, for us, instead of I love how you say it's generation that have been doing it, grandparents, parents, and it's it's generation. It's the money that is moving forward, not backwards. Right. Where for us Africans, the money, most Africans, our money, it's rare that our money is moving forward. It's usually moving backwards because we work and we make money to technically not to take care of the future, but to take care of the past. It might sound a little bit weird or negative, but I mean it in a way we make money to take care of our parents, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We have to take care of our parents. We have to take care of our caregivers, people who sacrificed for us to be here, right? But when I came to America, that's when I was introduced to the culture you were saying, where Americans understand the importance of actually making their money go to the future, to their future, to their children's children. And this is why I'm so happy that you're here, because I think as Africans, and especially even women, we need to learn these things because we want to learn we want to be there as well as Africans. If Americans can do that, we can do that as well.
100%.
So definitely with us, the money will definitely be going to the past to take care of our parents, which is nothing wrong with it. But then how can we also be wise, and make it work in the future for our future children that we don't have yet, that will soon one day have. So the second, actually, before this is it's not here, but why do you think it's actually important to think about the future, our future children when we? Why do you think it's important to think about the future generation when it comes to like money, transferring, money or wealth or anything that can? What do you?
It really comes down to, a lot of it has to do with wanting a better future for your kids and wanting something better than what you had. And when I was younger, I never really realized the sacrifices my parents made coming to America, like especially at the time that they came. I never really realized the sacrifices until I'm like, out here on my own, New York, LA, and then like I'm like, wow, you had to do this, and then you had kids. Like it really just makes you think of how much more you want the best for whoever else. And like I'm not saying like, my life wasn't horrible or anything, but it's one of those things where it's like you can have it easier for the next person. And like I don't think that we need to put like a medal on suffering. I think people put too much of a badge of honor on suffering too much, and like it's not really a flex. And I think it's one of those things, like if you set up those right, like you set up the right systems in place, you can set up your family for future. And like that shouldn't be anything that people hate on. Like when somebody is like, their parents set them up for success, that's something that some people will look at and say, oh, well, that person just has some sort of like,
we actually judge it.
We judge it, but it's
because
they're
spoiled. That's not their money. It's their parents' money. Like,
I was something that you would like to. I mean, isn't that what you want for your kids? Like,
it should be celebrated. I think, to be honest, like I'm trying to do that for my kids. I don't want them to suffer like
you want the best for them, and even
I want them to have the best life, man, the better life that I had. I don't want my daughter to be.
Yeah, like if they don't need to, I think it's something that we need to like. Yes, like I do believe that you do learn lessons in the ways that you need to, but there's just too much of a badge of honor on suffering. And if you don't need to do that for, your kids, and not even just kids, like your family in general, you want to see the people that you love not have to suffer.
Definitely teach them the importance of how hard 100%. You had to work to earn the lifestyle that they have, the good life. But not, the suffering thing. Like we need to get to that place where. Yes, they need to know, that mommy and daddy didn't get these things for. It didn't this was not money from trees, money. Like they worked for this stuff, and I have to also learn how to maintain what they built, and actually add to what they build, so they can live. I can also actually allow my kids to come into whatever I build. So my other question for you, is there any reason that you decided, like a personal reason why you decided to become a financial literacy advocate? Like where did it come from?
It started in two different ways. First would definitely start from, I would say, my dad. As I mentioned before, he immigrated here. He worked in finance and accounting his entire career, and so I learned a lot from him. He would just kind of give personal advice. So he when I first moved out here, he was like, he told me, actually we had a phone call this weekend, and he told me, he was like, I didn't even know how I made it when I came. He came from Mombasa, Kenya. And he was like, Mary, I don't even know how I came to America. I only had $9 in my pocket. And like he came on a scholarship to school, and so he was just kind of telling me about that, and so where he started and like how he moved up, like no handouts or anything. He really had to work his way through. But from what the lessons that he taught me, so when I started school, when I was in school in New York, he was like, you need to open your checking account, get a credit card so you can start building your credit so by the time you graduate. So a lot of it came from my dad, and then I realized. The more I spoke to, like friends and stuff, a lot of them just didn't have that sort of background, or that they didn't have parents that gave them that sort of support. And I noticed that, and it's not really anyone's fault, but I kind of just took what my dad had taught me, and I was just kind of like telling other people too, like open a credit card. You don't have to max it out, but for example, it'd be good to build credit with, because I mean, by the time you graduate, they're not going to look at you like you don't have any sort of credit built, for example. you know, he had taught me like save 10% of each of your paycheck when I first started working. Like just really small things that have like stuck with me throughout like my whole time. Like since I started making money, and I've been working 2 jobs every semester as I was in school. So I took that very seriously. But I noticed, first was my dad, and second I noticed that I noticed, you know, the more I worked that there was, you know, minority and women, they were really, they are somewhat taken advantage of when it comes to like the financial systems. We kind of get the short end of the stick, and it's because sometimes we may not know, we don't have access to that information, or we're just not in the places to actually have these conversations to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, because let's just keep it real. You know, this information is really mainly in the higher society. It used to be mainly in the higher society because they were the ones who had the money to invest, right? So, like you said, it was, I can tell I can relate when you said it was, you saw it, especially in the minority. But also I think for like the history of this country, I think also they somehow kept this information.
Yeah, there's definitely a systematic
where they keep this information to maybe
kept.
Yeah, to just say, hey, let's just keep this knowledge to ourselves, you know, so we can stay a step ahead of others. That I think that's
100%.
You know, one of the reasons. But first of all, we were talking about financial literacy.
Right.
Someone might be like, what is that? So what, like, define that so that we, you know, someone can actually be like, know what it is,
right?
Understand,
Financial literacy is really just understanding how your money works. You know, it's one thing to study in a textbook, like this is how you make money work for this specific real estate developer, but like how your money works in your life, it's like the financial knowledge that you have on like your own personal knowledge and how to just make it work for you as well. That's really how I would define it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think if it's one thing, man, sometimes we know how to spend more than we know how to understand which dollar came in, right? Which dollar should I keep? Which dollar should I invest? Mostly we just know like, oh, this is what I made. Let me either save it or let me just spend it all, like, you know. And I think we actually learn more about saving more than investing.
Oh my, that's a good point.
Can you share why, like, the saving, you know, part of the saving part of like when it comes to money, and then the investing? What do you think is better?
Okay, investing is going to be better, but so this is a really good, I like that you brought that up, because I think a lot of the times as African, like children of African immigrants, our parents were like taught to save, because in Africa, investing isn't really a thing. You don't really have the New York Stock Exchange. You don't really have, like, right now, I mean, now everyone can do like different cryptocurrencies, like there's a lot of different apps that you can do, but like in Africa, like the first, like, in order to buy a house, they don't give you a line of credit. Like, that's cash. So Africa, like, everything that we have there is 9 times out of 10 is cash. So we don't really have stock markets. We don't have any of that stuff. And I will say Americans are really big on credit. Like, I think credit card debt is at the highest that it's ever been in, like, I think, I want to say a decade, but I don't have the right numbers. But like, American credit card debt is in like that. It's like in one of the highest.
Man, that's how they actually. You have to tell us why is that, because when I first came here, you know, everybody was like, stay away from credit cards, stay away from credit cards, and I would say that I kind of did, but then somebody else said, hey, no, you need a credit card because you gotta build your credit.
You do have to build your credit.
And then I was like, oh, so I can use someone else's money. So I was like, okay, now I got the credit, and I didn't have the knowledge of how it works.
Right.
And I would pay on time, and sometimes I would not pay on time. And sometimes actually there was a time where I even forgot about paying.
Yeah.
And girl, it hit my credit that time. Okay, it hit my credit. You don't know, because for you're just spending the card.
Right.
But you don't know what it's doing. And especially if it's like maybe in the future you're trying to purchase something. But then I started getting phone calls, and that's how I realized, like, girl, you really bad with money.
No, yeah.
At that time, it's so, like the naivety of not knowing. It's just like it feels good to spend, but when people don't understand why the importance of action, especially like we're talking to people who live now in America, like immigrants, you know, it's like the diaspora, right? If you're from Kenya, you're from Rwanda, Burundi, Congo, Ghana, Nigeria.
Right.
So now tell us, why are credit cards good and bad?
So I 100% know exactly what you're saying. Their credit cards are not good and they're not bad. It just depends on your debt management. And it really comes down to like your credit card can honestly be like one of your best friends if you can, you can make your payments, like you don't spend, you can pay back what you spend within 30 days.
Right.
And that's really what they're designed to use. But you have to keep in mind, credit card companies, that's how they make their money, is by if you make a late payment, they're gonna charge you like, it's probably somewhere between like 18 to up to like 30% of an interest rate.
Right.
So that's how they make their money, and that's how we can get into a trap when we end up spending more than we actually have. And I think that's honestly, this isn't even like an African thing, like just Americans in general, like our economy is like surviving honestly off of debt. Because people don't have like it's not like an issue. I mean, maybe it is like an overall like.
Listen, America is just in. I know like everybody, especially people who live in Rwanda right now or in Africa, they're like, we want to come to America. Listen, America is how do you call it?
You don't know the recession.
Who do they owe? I mean, recession, but
it's like every trillions of debt and like trillions. And I was like, I don't know who we owe, but it's
who do we owe? Who do they America owe? But anyway, what you were saying, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going, because
So a lot of it has to do with that we're just in a cycle of being in a lot of debt, and it's really coming down to credit cards can be your best friend. Like you can actually, I like to think of credit cards as like you can really make it work to your advantage, or you can hate and say like they're bad, they're evil, and then. They're really bad and evil if you don't have good debt management skills, honestly. Like
if you don't know how to live within your means,
it's just not for you. Then you maybe don't need a credit card. But credit cards, they do open doors for you. And like when you have your own businesses, you need to take out a business loan. When you need to get a house, for example, unless you have, at least $400,000, which I assume is like the minimum cash for the house, you're likely going to need to get a lender, and you need a credit score. When you need to rent a place, you need a credit score. When you want to get a car and you don't have all cash, your credit score. So a lot of the way America is, it's not designed to make everyone succeed in that way. So you really have to be mindful of that. So I think like having a credit card is good because you can get points. Like I like to use my cards for like airline points, or you can get like specific cards with like specific hotels.
There's some really good benefits,
There's amazing benefits, and that's if you know how to use it, and then you can make it work for you, or you can just say, you know what, this isn't for me. But that also really comes down to like a personal, like you need to know how to manage your own debt, and that's more like an internal like thing that you have to really work through.
Yeah, and the good thing is like if you mess up, like I did before, because I messed up. Out of ignorance, and then one thing I will always be grateful for is like the turnaround for me was, when I gave my life to Christ. It's like I started, I was awakened to just understanding, managing my finances, time. But it really started with like the time and because I had to now make time to like spend time reading the Bible, praying, and that really started helping in other areas. So with money, I think because money is spiritual too, right? So
it is.
And that's one thing too. Like I remember, now I'm like getting into like working with God and just becoming more conscious and aware of like how I live, what I do. And I remember God was like, so if you're gonna come to me and you want me to repair you, now you gotta start with money. You gotta make sure you gotta pay your credit card. I swear. And another reason why we're talking about this, I know that Christians sometimes think that getting money, prosperity is like of the devil. No. The Bible, the Word of God Himself says that He gave us the ability to produce wealth. Like God wants us to prosper.
Yeah.
Especially as women too. Sometimes even a lot of people get in so much trouble because of lack of money.
Right.
You know, where you end up compromising your values, your moral, your character, doing things that you would never do because you don't have enough money. But when we learn how to manage money and learn to live within our budget, there's so many things that we are protected from that, you know,
Right.
that's even women, like you cannot be taken advantage of, you know, when you have your own finances, like you have your own money, you know, you know how to manage your money. Like no one is gonna come in and try to, you know, use that, you know, no one is gonna, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
So, and actually, talking about that, how important do you think it is for us women? Tell me first your age, right?
I'm 27.
Look at her. She's 27 and this woman by the age of 35, she's gonna be a millionaire.
Amen. I'm gonna claim that. I'm gonna claim that.
No, seriously, receive it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it's important for us African women to learn about money and like the management of, you know, money, financial literacy?
In my personal experience, I've seen it even in Ghana and like in my own family, how women can get taken advantage of when it comes to like their money, and how that can leave them in a very bad position. It's very important because I think the society, because we're talking about African women, we grew up in such a way, it's very much like you need to just be with this one, you need to be with this one person, then they're going to be the sole provider. Yeah. God forbid something is to happen to someone and then you're just kind of like left alone. It really becomes a source of, okay, like now you're put in a very bad situation. And now that we have the education resources, the internet's free, it's really important for us to have an understanding of how we can manage our own money on our own. How you can be self-sufficient on your own. It's not to say you need to like, you know,
be independent.
Yeah, like, but you definitely need to know how to like hold your own down. And I think once you can manage things on your own, that's when you realize people can't take advantage of you. Because it's really important, because a lot of the times, and I think I've seen it a lot, especially with African women, it's very much of like, we need to be with this person so they can just be like the provider for us, and then we don't think about anything, we don't care about anything, and then maybe, God forbid, that guy goes out and he cheats on you and then like leaves you, and then you're just kind of stuck there, right? You know what I mean? And it's an unfortunate reality. I'm not saying people need to be financially literate because of that, but it's just, why wouldn't you want to have that for yourself?
That is one of the reasons, and it's so valid. And another reason, because let's say you know, because women, we actually taught from a very young age, like, you know, just be beautiful, just take care of yourself, find a rich man to marry you. You don't have to work, just, you know, just be, you know. But then, what happens if that man passes away?
God forbid, yeah, anything can happen.
Anything can happen, you know. And God knows. Like, I would share for me, for example, like when my dad passed away, it was just my mom with me, my sister, and my brother. So I don't remember much because I was really young, but I remember seeing my mother, because she was a very smart woman too. She was, but at that time my dad passed away, she wasn't working, because it was like a few years after the literally a few years after the genocide. That time things were not all good in the country. So I can tell, like from my very little memory I have from that time, I could tell that she was asking herself questions like, what am I going to do with the kids by myself, you know? So that's like something that can happen, and you cannot predict that, hey, there's certain things that are out of our control, right? And then, let's say, for example, another thing where, another thing, I think it's also another reason why as women it's important for us to be like knowledgeable when it comes to money, is because I think it's also good to come into whatever relationship, partnership, whatever, with that knowledge, so you come in as an asset, not a liability. You know, so it's a partnership when you can contribute, you know, to your husband. Because I also think when we put like men has to be the provider, like it's an obligation, I feel like it's also too much weight on men. I don't know what you think, because I think two people
Two is
are
better than one.
Yeah,
It is.
You know, so that's how I think. You know, I
Right.
think we talked about it too.
Right.
The other day, and you were like, yeah, we agreed on, like, we were
Yeah.
very on that same page. So you said something like saving money will never make you wealthy. Because to me, when I was in Africa, right, I used to think that, save until, you know, it grows and becomes like this huge mountain of cash.
Well, okay, I want to, like, I think they're two different contexts. Like,
Yeah.
it's talking about here in America specifically, if you know you have the access and the ability to invest, you should be doing that. If you're, like, for example, like when I visit some of my family in Mombasa, there's really not that many means to invest.
Yeah, in Africa.
And so a lot of the times in Africa, it's very much like you do have to likely save, and a lot of the people who are making money, like, there are different stock exchanges within Africa that you can invest on. Like Ghana actually has a stock exchange. Johannesburg in South Africa, they actually have a stock exchange. There's
Nice.
other things that you can do, like real estate, renting out,
To make
it work for you. But it's just kind of different because it's like buying a house there. You don't get creditors. Like most houses in Africa that I know, it's cash. If you want to buy land, a house, it's cash.
It's cash.
So it's one of those things where it's like, and then you can make it work for you and like, you know, rent it out, whatever it may be. But it's a different ballgame.
Because you can always, so you mean like there's other ways to invest your money
It's not the stock.
without, it's not just the stock market. There's other ways,
Right.
like, you know, you're saying
100%.
real estate, yeah.
Yeah.
Beside real estate, you know, if let's say, you know, there's someone out there who's watching and say, so I have a couple of savings right now and I want to invest this money in a way that is going to bring me back more money. What are the other ideas other ways that people can actually
Invest?
multiply? Yeah.
In Africa, one of them I would say, if you buy, there are things called alternative assets, and so really that can be things from like buying gold, for example. Gold or silver. There's other things like you can buy wine. Maybe if you're like in South Africa, people do buy wines. You can keep them. They do grow in value. Then you can sell them later on over time. Real estate would be the best one in my opinion, but there are different. I don't want to be like say like, okay, get crypto and like you know, like it's crazy, because that's something like everybody does have access to. It's like decentralized, but you know, like I would just say like there are different revenue, like there are different streams of like how you can kind of generate more revenue for yourself. And like maybe just like if you look into specific banks, for example, like if you put your money in a specific savings account, they're likely gonna, you know, give you back a specific interest rate for keeping your money with them. And you can maybe look at the banks and the different interest
And
rates
that
they
it's
offer.
in Africa too.
Yeah,
like because they do that.
Right.
So what is like one mistake you've observed as women make when it comes to money? Especially when like we get a little bit of some money, you know, some cash.
Yes, I definitely.
And what do you think should be like we should do instead?
Right.
In a, you know, from a positive way, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's two things. They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The first one is trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Ooh.
So it's really just trying to keep up with like, you know, social media. You keep up with the appearances. You want to keep up with the crowd, but like, you know, your bank account is really suffering right now. Like you really don't even have savings. You don't even have like $300, but you want to buy the next Gucci belt because your tax return came in. You know, it's one of those things, and it's like you don't have that like. You're like, it's more of like you're doing things for show. So keeping up with the Joneses is definitely one, and then the other one, it kind of goes hand in hand, but I think lifestyle inflation, and that's just like not even just women.
Ooh, lifestyle inflation.
I think
Can
it's
you
more.
please?
Yeah, it's
I
one.
love that. Yeah.
For me, it's one of those things where it's like you start making more money, so you start to exponentially increase your expenses. But then you start to realize like you're not even saving as much as you could have. So like if, for example, if you know like your rent, you're paying $1,000 for rent and you're making like $50K a year, and then all of a sudden you are making $100K a year, and then like you want to go up and get a place that's like $4,000. It's kind of like, yeah, you're making more, but and like you're spending more, but you're not like the margin between what you're saving is just the same, and you're not really saving or investing anything.
So you're literally living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. So I think that's something to be very mindful of, not just for women. I think that I've definitely seen that. And I've seen people who have like come into windfalls of money, whether it's through like an inheritance or like some sort of lottery or just like some crash of money, and then they lose it just as quickly as they got it. Because if you can't manage the money where you are at right now, I don't know if you're going to be able to handle that blessing when more comes in.